Jamie. Thanks so much for doing this, and a big thank you to Andrea Rosenhaft who made this happen, because she really tried many Barnes and Nobles to get us going, and this is our first, we hope, of others as well, so thank you. So yes, my name is Perry Hoffman, and I started an organization about 16 years ago because the National Alliance on Mental Illness did not take BPD under its mission umbrella. It didn't have time to see it as a priority population. So several of us got together actually 3 weeks before 9/11. We met over at New York Hospital at my office, and we said we needed to do something for this disorder because unlike other disorders that are under the NAMI umbrella, there was no advocacy being done on behalf of this disorder. So we started this organization. We decided the first thing to do, you have to organize yourself around something. So we decided to do a conference. And we were very fortunate that we called Dr. John Gunderson, who actually is the co-editor on this book, and we said, would you do a conference with us? And he said, yes. And so we thought, oh my goodness, maybe we're going to get on the mark with this. So then we called Dr. Marshall Linehan. We said, Dr. Gunderson's going to do a conference with us. Would you do a conference with us? She said, yes. We thought, we're really moving along here. And then we called Dr. Kernberg, who some of you might know really was the one who initially put the disorder on the map. And he said also that he would also do the conference with us. So the next year at Columbia University, we had over 450 people for a 2-day conference. And that was sort of the beginning of our organization. And the reason that our organization has been able to move forward is because it's driven by the passion of families. We're a family organization. We're not-for-profit. We're all volunteer. Nobody gets a salary. It really comes from the heart, all the work that we want to do. And we've been very fortunate to also be able to design a family program called Family Connections. This is a 12-week program, research-based, that's now in 20 countries. We actually run it on Sundays at New York Hospital on Sunday mornings. It's done by Ann and Matt Costello. They've been doing it for 7 years. I think they've had probably 30 groups, and they keep doing it. We have a flyer in case you're interested. So that's a little background on who we are. And once we started our organization and started to make some connections, we then decided, you know what, we're not giving up on NAMI. We're going to keep trying to see if NAMI would recognize this as one of their priority populations. And so we went down there, we spoke to some people, and then they decided, you know what, maybe we need to take a second look at this. And they sponsored a 2-day BPD experts group. And we had most of the major researchers and names there, Dr. Gunderson, Marshall Linehan, John Oldham, who then went on to run Menninger Clinic. There were about 15 of us there. And after that 2 days and orienting NAMI to who we are and why we're doing what we're doing, they decided to make it a priority population. So that was in 2006, and ever since then we've always done a symposium at the NAMI National Conference. We helped rewrite their website on BPD. So NAMI has been now one of our best supporters, and we're so grateful that we're able to work together and move this disorder forward. This is a disorder of a lot of stigma, and I'd just like to read to you a few lines of the introduction because it'll give you the sense of how the disorder is seen, and then I'll say a little more about it. Seldom does an illness, medical or psychiatric, carry such intense stigma and deep shame that its name is whispered or a euphemism coined, and its sufferers despised and even feared. Perhaps leprosy or syphilis or AIDS fits this category. Borderline personality disorder is such an illness. In fact, it's been called the leprosy of mental illnesses and the disorder with surplus stigma. It may actually be the most misunderstood psychiatric disorder of our age. And anybody who's had any interface with either somebody who has the disorder, or if you have the disorder, you know that every word of this is true. This is a disorder that is rampant with discrimination, and it really unfortunately started with professionals who still keep that stigma going, but each year we try to chip away a little more at that. What happened was then, over the years, I would get phone calls, and still do every week, and someone will say, I've just been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or my loved one has, and I'm devastated. I go on the internet and I read all these awful things about the disorder. It says it's hopeless, it's a chronic illness, people never get better. Actually, one person told me, a psychiatrist said whispered to the father, your daughter has borderline, there's no hope. So with this in mind, and then also knowing that there are many stories of recovery, that what we decided, Dr. Gunderson and I decided to do, was to put this book together. So this is a story of recoveries from 24 people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And the book really gives hope to people. When I also work privately, so when I see people, I bought a whole bunch of these books and I give it out as soon as someone tells me they have the disorder. Somebody came to me the other day and she said, I've been told I have borderline personality disorder. She said, I was told it takes 5 years for somebody to get better and that probably I won't get better. And I said, you know what? You went to see the wrong person. Because with the new evidence-based treatments that are out there, and there are really 4 that are most prominent, I said people get better. And in fact, this is one of the few psychiatric diagnoses that's not lifelong. People with schizophrenia, and thank goodness with medication, they can control their symptoms, but it's a lifelong disorder. Bipolar disorder is a lifelong disorder. Depression, on some level, is also a lifelong disorder, as are many others. Borderline personality disorder is not a life sentence. It's actually the voice of hope in the psychiatric community. So that's the message that we have been giving out. We hope people will see for themselves through the evidence-based treatments. And let me just quickly go through which ones they are. So there's dialectical behavior therapy, which is DBT, and that started probably in the late 80s, and the landmark article came out in 1993, and that revolutionized borderline personality disorder in people's lives. Marsha Linehan, who's the creator of DBT, said don't hospitalize patients. She called all the hospitals in her area and she said, don't put them in the hospital. That's not going to help them get better. We need to teach them skills. And then, of course, with managed care, who was delighted to hear that. That's also been behind the impetus of not hospitalizing patients for a long time, which is a good thing. So there's DBT. There are 25 studies out there that show its effectiveness. There's transference-focused therapy that was started by Dr. Otto Kernberg and his team up at New York Hospital that also has, I think, 2 studies now to show its efficacy. There's mentalization, which was started in London by Peter Fonagy and Anthony Bateman. That has a number of studies out there. And the last one, and probably the one we should be watching the most right now, is called General Psychiatric Management. This was started by Dr. John Gunderson and his colleagues, and it's a much less intense treatment to learn for therapists. So there's much more opportunity to get it out there across the country. It's simple, it's brief, it's very basic about learning cognitive behavioral approaches and some psychodynamic interventions, but it's very effective. So those are the 4 treatments that are out there. I will take questions afterwards. What I'd like to do now is just read you one more clip. This is from Brandon Marshall, who's the football player who came out. He was actually the first and probably the only celebrity that has said that they have borderline personality disorder, which is unfortunate because there are a lot of people out there. I hear about and we all do hear about all these movie stars, and they go to addiction programs, and I think many of us in the field will say, what are they really looking at, and what should really be treated? So with that being said, we are very grateful to Brandon Marshall, who at least put it on the map in that sense, and he wrote the foreword for the book. For 5 years, my life was a living hell. I had no clue what was going on. I spent years talking to doctors, sometimes 3 or 4 in 1 week. It wasn't until I received the diagnosis of borderline personality disorder that I was able to grasp hold of my life. People only saw what was unfolding on ESPN. The drug arrests, the domestic disputes, that was the story the public was absorbing. What they didn't see, couldn't possibly know, were the days I sat in a dark room, the days that went on by when I didn't utter a single word, and the persistent game of dramatic emotional changes that was going on inside me. So we appreciate what Brandon Marshall has done, and we also appreciate the 24 authors who really put their heart into making this book possible.